Hi everybody, it's Ashley of Day-to-Day Social Work. I'm a private online tutor and I specialize in assisting people to pass the license exam in social work on the master's and bachelor's level. You can find me on social media platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Day-to-Day Social Work. So welcome to another Sunday Social. This Sunday Social will be about the importance of internships and volunteer work as a social worker. So I guess the very basics of it is that when you are very first starting out, which most of us are not, but there are some people subscribed to Day-to-Day Social Work on YouTube and members on the Facebook group and Instagram page who are just starting out in social work. So I like to make sure I pay attention to them too. But I guess for the very basics of it is that you definitely need to have some volunteer experience at least for grad school. So when you're applying for grad school, it's very important to have that to put on your application. So that's like the very basic part of the importance of it. But when we get to the more advanced part of it, of course, it's important to have that volunteer work and internship experience because it's going to help you build your resume. It's going to help you get jobs, better jobs, the jobs that you want, and it's going to help you become well-rounded as a social worker in the field. It's going to make you more marketable. So, I will give you some examples of some experiences that I have had with volunteer work and with internships and the importance of it to me as a social worker and how it's helped with my career and how it's helped craft my career. So I've always said in previous videos that you have to be very strategic about your social work career and you have to be able to plan it out and you have to make moves that will help you get to where you want to be as a social worker. So it's very important, especially as a new social worker, which like I said, a lot of us are not new, but there are some of us who are, and some of us who aren't new who are trying to move and navigate through the field. But it's very important. Let me see what this is. Okay. It's very important because a lot of people who are new to the field find it hard, especially new college graduates, whether they are BSW or if they are MSW, they find it hard to get jobs right out of school. And I know for a fact, like most of you know, because we've gone through it before. I've been a social worker, legitimately able to call myself a social worker, since I passed the license exam in 2015, which is only 5 years. And like I said, that's legitimately able to call myself a social worker because in the state of South Carolina, where I am, you can't call yourself a social worker without being licensed. But I've been technically a social worker for 10 years before I got licensed. I've been in this field for 10 years. I've worked with a lot of different demographics, a lot of different populations. And so I think I'm pretty well-rounded. I have not had any experience with substance abuse, unfortunately. And that's what I don't really have any interest in it. But, you know, I do feel like I will at some point need to get some experience directly with that. I won't say that I don't have any experience because I've definitely worked with people who have had use issues. And so I just haven't had any professional experience where I've treated anybody with substance use issues. So volunteering goes back years and years and years for me. It's the very foundation of who I am. It's part of the reason why I wanted to be a social worker. Very early on in life, I remember being in elementary school. I lived in this neighborhood where there were tons of kids. We would ride our bikes and we all rode the school bus together and all that kind of stuff. And there was this man in the community who would get us all together and we would clean up the community. We would pick up soda cans and trash and all that kind of stuff. And then he would take us to the store and give us candy, not on some creepy stuff, but you know, he was very like legit. He was like, this is your community, keep it clean. And so I was in elementary school then. So I think that was my very first experience of doing quote unquote volunteer work although it was kind of forced, but not really forced. But he was like, look, this is your community. You keep it up. You keep it clean. So that was that. Then as I got older into middle school, I was in a program called CHAMPS, and that's an acronym for Communities Helping, Assisting, Motivating, Promising Students. And that is what really kind of also helped me build a foundation of volunteer work and helping out in my community, because I was a student of the program, and then I became a mentor in training, and then a mentor, and then the assistant director of the program. And so I kind of moved up, and that program is something that I hold very near and dear to me. And it's really the reason why, one of the reasons why I wanted to become a social worker, because the founder of that program was one of my childhood heroes. He is from Ethiopia, and he's very grateful for everything. And we would adopt highways, and he would go and help us, and we would build ramps for the elderly, and dig ditches and do all kinds of stuff. And he would be right there with us. And he was so very grateful for everything, like everything. When it rained, he was grateful. He would eat a slice of pizza like it was the most delicious gourmet meal in the world. Like, he's just so grateful for everything. And so just watching him kind of really instilled in me a sense of community and a sense of giving back and helping others. But when we get into it, as it relates to social work, let's see, where do I want to start? So I guess I'll start with, and so when I applied for grad school, I put all of that, well, not when I was in elementary school experience, but, you know, the communities helping, assisting, motivating, promising students experiences. I definitely put all of those on my resume, or my application rather, for grad school. But then also, like, in college, so that's where I'll start. I'll start in undergrad. So in undergrad, my roommate and I, we joined a lot of groups on campus. We were involved. We were in Collegiate Women of the Upstate, and we were on the gospel choir, and we were on, not the gospel choir, we were in the NAACP group. We were in the Pride group. We were in, what else? We were in everything. Like, we wanted to be involved in everything, even if it didn't directly relate to us. We just wanted to be involved. And then of course we also joined a sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, which is definitely one of the main reasons why I wanted to join that sorority, was because community, sisterhood, giving back, community service, all of that was very important to me. And that sorority definitely gives back to the youth, to the community, all of that. So all of the things that I did in undergrad, all of the community experiences, the building the Habitat for Humanity houses, the Adopt a Highways, the book drives, the going to visit kids at school, the Big Brother, Big Sisters program, the Boys and Girls Clubs, all of that stuff that we did, all of that. And when we talk about social work as a whole, it kind of is minimal when we talk about the other stuff that I'm going to talk about later. But as a foundation, all of those smaller things were really good for me to be able to put on my grad school application to get my master's in social work, because that was one of the things that they wanted to see. They wanted to see that you, at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina, they wanted to see, and this was in 2011 when I applied, they wanted to see your community service. They wanted to see your personal statement, a little essay that you had to write. They wanted to see your grades, which I had mostly A's and a couple B's, and I made my first C in college. But they wanted to see all of that stuff before they consider admitting you, accepting you for grad school. So that's that. Then when we get into grad school, I worked full-time in grad school. I didn't do any part-time stuff. I really didn't do a lot of volunteer work, but the place that I worked was like, it wasn't work for me. It was like, it prepared me for everything social work. I was a support services coordinator at a nonprofit for homeless families. I know y'all have heard me say that over and over again, but I learned everything that place prepared me for any and everything. I learned everything. I saw all kinds of people. The people there reminded me of myself. They reintroduced me to myself, and I saw a lot of my own family and childhood and a lot of those different families, and it was a great 4 years working there. I worked full-time. I was in grad school part-time, and it was just the best experience. So even though I didn't really do any technical volunteer work because I was working in schooling, I definitely did enough to be able to gain the experience that I needed in my career. But anyway, so while I was in grad school, and this is where the internships come in, I had 3 internships in grad school, and the first one was at a child advocacy center. And I was very excited about it because they did forensic interviewing there. And forensic interviews with children is where if a child has been abused physically or sexually, they will go for a forensic interview. And most of it was for sexual abuse. And there were licensed master's level social workers doing the forensic interviews, and they would bring the child into a room, and the interview was recorded, and you would ask them questions about what happened. And there was this procedure called RATAC, and it was, you build a rapport, you use anatomically correct names for body parts, and I forgot what the other letters mean, but I'm going to get certified in that. Like, that's one of my goals. But anyway, so they would get the child to tell what happened to them by using this procedure, and they use the anatomically correct dolls so that the child can show you what happened to them. And it was real, real neat. And that, if I hadn't had that internship, I wouldn't have known that that was an interest of mine. Like, I really want to do forensic interviewing once I'm in private practice. I really want to get trained on it, and I'm going to offer that as part of my private practice. So that's one thing. And let me just tell you about that internship. They did very, very, very great work there. And I mean, it was so neat to see it. And they also did forensic medical exams as well to see if a child had been physically or sexually abused. And they had like the renowned doctor who would come and do the not evaluations, but the examinations and that kind of stuff. But then also, it was a true internship experience, kind of like what you see on TV. And I've told this story before in previous video, but I know there are a lot of new people. So, I mean, I was excited. There were like 4 of us from the university all together coming to do our internship like 2 days a week. And it was summertime when we started. It was the end of summer, of course, going into fall. And this agency waited all summer long. They stacked all of these file boxes of different files all across the office all summer long. They left it all. They would stack these boxes, and I don't know, they were, I guess, client files or something from years back. And they waited until we got there and made us move all of this stuff. And the place was in this big old 2-story house with an attic in the basement. They waited until we came for our internship to make us move all of these boxes. And I mean, this was heavy stuff. I mean, big boxes full of paper. And we would have to move all of this stuff downstairs to the basement. And it wasn't like it could be done in one day. Like, that's how much it was. It took us like 2 weeks of coming there 2 times a week for 2 weeks to get all of this stuff down in the basement. And if we wanted to look at a forensic interview, we couldn't until we moved some of the boxes. So we got tired of it. Like I said, it was 4 of us. We got tired of it because that's not what we signed up for. That's not what we're paying our tuition for. And so we got together at lunch one day and we called to the field instructor's office and we told them, like, look, this is what they have us doing. It's really manual, hard labor, because I'm not even joking. These boxes were heavy, full of paper, and it was not fun. And also, like, they treated us like I said, like classic TV interns. Like, if the phone rang, you had better answer it. If the doorbell rang, you better stop what you're doing and go and answer it. And they were just mean. They did great work, and I won't say they, but it was the office operator, manager, whoever. She was like a bulldog. Like, y'all better answer this phone. You better open the door. And then once you take these boxes downstairs, then you can go and learn how to do the forensic interview. So we were not happy with that. So they found out that we called the office and they separated us. So we couldn't all go to lunch together. It was hell. Seriously, it really was. So I dreaded going there twice a week. It was like walking on eggshells. It was not fun. I did learn a lot. I had to watch back the forensic interviews, take notes, and give it to the social worker so that she could make it into a formal report and then give it to law enforcement. And then what else happened? Oh, one of their social workers that did the counseling, because they also offered counseling there for the kids, they fired her for some reason, something that dealt with court. And then they wanted me to do therapy with this kid and then have one of the other social workers sign off on my work. And the social worker was like, no. And I told her, I don't blame you because I don't know what I'm doing. And I wouldn't want to sign my name on something that an intern who's not even degreed yet, let alone licensed, doing therapy with this kid. So I remember meeting with the mom, and the mom was like, the kid had been abused by their cousin, who I think was mentally handicapped, and the kid was touching himself and doing other things. And the mom was like, I want you to make him stop. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to make this kid stop? So she knew that I didn't know what I was doing, and she never came back. At least she didn't come back when I was there. So, those are the kind of things you have to watch out for in internships, them treating you like you are the help, because that's how we felt. And also them trying to get you to do stuff that you're not qualified to do. And you have to be able to speak up. I was too timid and shy to speak up for myself. And I just did what they told me to do because I was just trying to get on through. But now, as someone 10 years later, I never would have even agreed to even think about doing therapy with that child. And I would have never been moving boxes, before I could do what I'm paying to do. Anyway, so that was that. What else? And so that, like I said, that sparked my interest in forensic interviews. So when I got the job at the police department a few years later as a victim advocate, it was a strategic move because I knew that I could. At that time, I was not licensed. I had my master's degree when I worked at the police department as a victim advocate. And I passed my license exam when I was there as well. So I kind of went there with the intention of navigating from victim advocate to forensic interviewer. So I actually talked with the chief and told him that was my plan. And he was like, yeah, we can talk about it and make a position for you and that kind of thing. But that never happened. And so that was one of the reasons why I left there, in addition to other things. And then what else? So the forensic interviews, I had something else I wanted to say. But anyway, so that was that with the forensic interviewing. So then, I wrote this long letter to the field office and to the lady that was over it. And I told her, like, hey, they told us in the beginning that we had to stay there for the whole year and that you couldn't change your internship. And so I was kind of just like dreading the second semester of going there. And I finally was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go there and walk on eggshells for another 3 months. And so I wrote a letter to her and I just told her, like, how would you feel if you had to go somewhere where you walk on eggshells, twice a week and it's 8 hours? And I'm like, please just let me change to something else. And so she did. And so then I went to the Independence House, which was a day group for people with mental illness, specifically depression and schizophrenia. And so that was definitely a good experience for me because I think that I kind of had a preconceived notion of what schizophrenia was. And I think that initially I was probably scared of going in there because I'm like, oh no, these people have schizophrenia. What are they going to be like? What are they going to say to me? What are they going to do to me? Da, 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 da. So of course that's ignorance, which we know ignorance is a lack of knowledge. And I definitely was not knowledgeable. But so when I went, I learned a lot. Like, I learned that it's not anything to be afraid of. I learned that these are people just like anybody else. And it was just neat to see the stuff that we learn in the book. And you will hear me talk about how neat it is to see stuff that we learn in the book in real life, because that's my current experience. Even now, after 10 years of being in the field, I'm seeing stuff more and more as I continue to develop as a social worker. I'm continuing to see the things that we've learned in the book manifest in the jobs that I have, and seeing the different disorders and the different stages of development and all that kind of stuff. So they were day groups. I was tasked with facilitating a day group, and it was difficult for me because I had in my mind how I wanted to present the curriculum, but I had to be able to water it down to their level of understanding. And that was difficult for me because I didn't necessarily know how to water it down so that someone who may have been actively experiencing psychosis could understand. And I don't know that that was the goal, actually, for them to be able to understand, more so than it was for them to just be a part of a community while they are there for the day group throughout the day. But some of them, and not all of them, were psychotic. And by psychotic, I mean experiencing psychosis actively while there. A lot of them were sane. Like I said, some just had depression. And I don't want to say just as in minimizing it, but, you know, some of them had depression and were functioning at a typical level for someone who doesn't have psychosis or an active mental illness. And every day they would come to the day group, and they would have breakfast and exercise in the morning, and then they would go to group, and then they would go to another group, and then we would have lunch, and then they did one more group in the afternoon, and then they would go home because they all lived in the community. And like I said, there were people there. This internship did not tell me about all of the things that some of the people there were dealing with. And so that was an issue for me once I found out. I think that you need to know certain things about your population and your clients before you go into it. For example, there was a man there who had a terminal illness that could have been spread through his blood, and they always taught us to treat all blood as if it's contaminated, but he had something that was specific, you know, that could have caused spread, I guess. And so they didn't tell us about that. They didn't tell us that this one man had murdered somebody and he had been acquitted because he was not guilty by reason of insanity. And so once I found that out, I didn't really know how to feel about working with someone like that. So these are all things that you need to know, like, because you want to be able to process this stuff. Like, if you don't know how you're going to feel, and you don't know that these are things that are going on, how are you going to be able to process it? So I think that your internship should tell you these things, because as a social worker, you're going to come across all kinds of different situations. So I think they should tell you, because that gives you a chance to process your feelings and your thoughts and your beliefs with your supervisor or your field instructor or your field liaison or whoever it is. So it was a really good experience because it took away my preconceived notion about working with people with schizophrenia. And it helped me to realize that there's not anything to fear normally. You know, sometimes certain situations can be a little dangerous depending on if psychosis is present, if there are hallucinations and things like that. But in a setting like that, where it's a day group, where people are pretty stable, yeah, it's nothing to really fear. So that was that one. Then the following year, which was my second internship, I did at a branch of the Urban League, and that was a macro internship. Actually, the Child Advocacy Center where they did the forensic interviews, that was a micro internship, and then the day groups was meso, and then the Urban League was a macro. And my track in grad school was macro. I didn't do micro because my job was micro. And I'm glad because I learned macro, which was good. So the Urban League was more about programming, program development, working with students, planning. We did a march against violence. We did fundraisers. We did a lot of macro stuff. And we didn't work directly with clients at all. We did a lot of programming and developing materials and that kind of stuff. So that was enjoyable, and it was different because the Urban League caters mostly to those who are disadvantaged, which a lot of times that demographic is people of color. And so their staff, all of their staff were Black, and that was a different experience. All of the staff at the Child Advocacy, the Child Advocacy Center were white. That was different. And then the ones at the day group place for mental illness, their staff was a mixture of people. So it was different environments, and you feel a different way in each of those environments. And I think I felt most comfortable at the Urban League, and then I felt most comfortable after that at the day group, and then at the Child Advocacy Center, but only because of how they treated us there at the Child Advocacy Center. But they all did great work, and it was really, really good. So that was that. So as far as the Urban League goes, I also want to open my own nonprofit one day. I did learn a lot of things about nonprofits. And this is another thing, whether you are volunteering, doing an internship, or getting paid and working somewhere, get the knowledge. You are there to take the knowledge. You are, yes, working, you're exchanging your skills, experience, knowledge, and expertise for a paycheck, but you're also there to learn. So don't just go in there and just do your job. Go in there and be curious, be inquisitive, ask questions. You know, how does the budget work? The place that I worked in grad school, they were so laid back. They would leave budgets on the printer. They would leave people's salaries printed out on the printer. They had no internal controls. It was a mess. Like, it really was a mess. But get the knowledge. Go in there, find out how, so this is an assessment. Oh, okay. I saved so many documents and stuff from that job that I worked at in grad school because they had assessments and they had different curriculums and they had this and that and how to write grants and all this other stuff. And if you don't think about it, you'll go into an agency and work there for years and you don't take anything with you but your immediate experiences. You need to go in there and figure out what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how you can take this with you for when you ultimately work for yourself, if that's your goal. So you want to know how to write grants, how to do applications, how to have a process, how to do a treatment plan, and of course you know how to do those things, but are you really paying attention to it? Are you soaking it in? Wait, did I say it right? Are you soaking it in to make sure that you are carrying this with you so that if your goal is to work for yourself and to have your own nonprofit or to have your own private practice, you know, if you go to therapy yourself, which I always encourage and advocate for, you know, how does your therapist do things? Like, how do they do their billing? How do they get paneled on insurance panels? How are they do they accept cards, and how do they get that card reader? And, you're there to get the information. You are there to get the information. So make sure that you are not letting gems drop and stay on the floor. Pick the gems up and carry them with you in your bag, so that when you go and you do your own thing, you have a better idea of what you're doing. Because I'll tell you from my experience and from other people's experience that I talk to, people do not want to help you get started out on your own. It's very hard. A lot of people don't want to share their knowledge because they feel like, well, nobody shared it with me. And then you do have some people that will help you, help lead you and guide you into the kind of things that you want to do when you are trying to work independently or start your own thing. So, but don't depend on anybody. Like, get the knowledge while you're there. When I worked at that place in grad school, I got all the knowledge. Like, I know how to set up a program for children, for adults, different classes for different life skills. Like, I learned all of that there. When I went, well, before that, I was at the domestic violence shelter, where they would close the door so that you couldn't see them when they were writing grants. And we were like, why do they always close the door and they're in their grant writing? And I don't know what they were doing, but to me, it's kind of suspect that you close the door when you're doing the grant writing. So, that was a question for me. Like, why are y'all closing the door? But like I said, I know how that program worked. I was a grant coordinator for the HPRP grant. And so, I know what it takes if I'm going to coordinate a grant for housing. And I know the different expectations of HUD and what kind of things they look for as far as lead being in apartments. And this building was built after 1976. So these are the things you have to look for. Like, all of that stuff, I'm carrying it. What else? The police department, neatest job I ever had. I understand some of the things that I didn't understand before. So I'm able to share that with other people, like why the police do this and why they do that. And I also understand that because I sat on the panel, to the hiring panel to do interviews, that, in some places, the requirements are not that high. I also learned that I was getting paid more as a victim advocate than some officers who had been on the job for 17 years, which I don't know that that's fair. I don't think that is fair. I think I should have been getting paid more, and I think that they should have been getting paid more. But, you learn about the different levels and the different chains of command and internal affairs and citizens academies and definitely, of course, victim services and all that kind of stuff. And then here at this job where I work for a hospital system, I'm learning about insurance, Medicaid and Medicare, and different kind of issues that people have, so that when I open my own private practice, I know what the issues are. I know. Okay, so this is part 2 because my phone cut off. But anyway, so, and I don't know that this will be posted back to back or what, but both of these will be posted and labeled part 1 and part 2. But anyway, so you can watch the second part later or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, let's see. Another thing, that I wanted to talk about, and I completely lost my train of thought when the video stopped me from doing what I needed to do. But, so just take all the knowledge. Like I said, working at the hospital, I've learned what the need is and what the demand is for certain services and therapies and that kind of thing. So, now that's that as far as internships and my experience. Make sure that you don't just get any internship, that you get something and you be strategic about it and you get where you want to be eventually in your career. Also, when I was in grad school, I took the opportunity to go down to Atlanta to the Urban League down in Atlanta, and I had my CEO of the Urban League that I was doing my internship with. I had him to contact the CEO at the one in Atlanta, because that's where I wanted to move to see if I could just do an informational interview. And so one spring break, I went down there and I talked to her, and she was going on and on and on about all this stuff. And she was like, "Are you going to take notes?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." So I pull out my book and I take notes, and she gave me a lot of information, but I didn't end up moving to Atlanta. It's just too fast paced for me. Although I did get a job offer after graduation to work at Clark Atlanta University in the TRIO program, but the pay was not going to cut it, and it was a lot of driving across the cities to schools to check on kids, and we know how, or some of us may know how, that Atlanta traffic is, and it was going to be 4 days a week, and I was not with it, but the pay was definitely not going to cut it, because I didn't want to move anywhere where I was going to have to struggle, and struggle is not for me. So, now, so that's that. Now, as far as just giving back in general, you know, when you get to a place to be able to give back, and it's not even necessarily that it's financially, it's just you have knowledge to give back to other people. I have a little cousin she went to my undergrad, she majored in what I majored in, or maybe she majored in what I minored in. I minored in criminal justice, and now she's getting her MSW, and she's coming here this week to ask me some questions about social work and that kind of thing. And, you know, she has a built-in cousin to be able to ask questions to about social work. So, I mean, that's great. Let's see, what else? I mean, just being a mentor to somebody else, giving back in that way, going to speak to classes at your College of Social Work at your university, or at your undergrad university, or whatever. But then also financially, I had a book scholarship that I offered at my high school for 3 or 4 years, and I just paid for kids for a winter's books for the first semester of college, because I was a first generation college student, and I didn't know that books cost so much money. And so my books were like $300 and something, and we did not have it. And so I was like, you know what, Mom, I'll just work for a year so we can save up the money, and I'll just go next year. And she was like, no, you're getting out of here. She got the money some kind of way, and boom, off I went, and here I am. So it was important to me that it would be a book scholarship, because I felt like if I'm a first generation college student and I went through that, I'm pretty sure there are other people who probably have that same kind of problem, or challenge rather. And of course, I didn't find out until later that there were cheaper books that you could rent online and that kind of thing. But as a first generation college student, you know, those are just things that you don't know. So I did have a little $400 book scholarship for a few years at my high school. But then the kids got lazy and didn't want to write a 2-page essay. So I stopped giving my little $400 because I wasn't getting enough applicants. So I'm like, if y'all don't even want to write a 2-page essay, then you probably, you know, don't deserve, at least not my little money. I'm like, it's just 2 pages. Anyway. So, also, when I worked at the police department, I was on the Neighborhood Accountability Board, which I loved so much because, like I said, my minor was criminal justice. I wanted to be a police officer at one point. I want to work in law enforcement doing something again, which is why I want to do forensic interviewing. But they had a Neighborhood Accountability Board that I volunteered on, and I would go once a week, and they were partnered with the Urban League, and I would sit on a panel of 2 other people, and these kids who had gotten in trouble with the law for either, mostly it was stealing stuff or getting kicked out of school for fighting or something like that. They would come before us and tell us what happened, and the victim could come and tell us how it impacted them, and we would come up with a punishment for the kid. Normally it would be in the form of community service, or writing a 10-year letter or a 5-year letter to yourself 5 years or 10 years from now. They had a case manager there for the kids to help them with life skills and that kind of stuff. So it was really fun for me to sit on that Neighborhood Accountability Board once a week and hear the different cases and talk to these kids directly about why they made the choices that they made and what they can do differently and see if they have any remorse and regret and that kind of thing. So if you have something like that interests you, do that. I mean, it was volunteer. I enjoyed it. I didn't waste my time at all. It was 2 or 3 hours after work once a week. So that was fun. And I can have that on my resume. I also did cops on courts when I was at the police department. So like on a Friday night, I would go to cops on courts where the officers would be playing basketball with the kids, and mostly boys. And then there were girls who would come, of course, little middle and high school girls that would come and sit on the bleachers and do their homework. So I helped with the homework. And, you know, I wasn't doing anything on a Friday night. So I would go and help with that. And I also was a big sister in the Big Brother, Big Sister program. And when I was in my earlier 20s, 10 years ago, even at that time, I knew that you couldn't pair a 14 or 15-year-old kid with someone that's like 40 or 50. I mean, you can, but they're not going to see that person as a big sister or big brother. They're probably going to see them as another parent figure. So when I was 20, in my early 20s, and I did the big sister part of it, like, even I was mature in my early 20s. So, I mean, I took my little sister to get her nails done. We went to the mall and got donuts and ice cream, and we talked and that kind of stuff. But like, I think that you really have to look at the age groups for those kind of things. So you want to make sure that you pair somebody with an age appropriate big sister. Like, I'll be 34 this month, and I'm very mature. I don't want to, like, if I'm going to have a little sister, I think she needs to be like 17 or 18 as opposed to like 12 or so, because, you know, it's different kind of mindset. So, and speaking of that, I was a transition coach last year. I volunteered to do that, where one of the local charter schools asked professionals in the community to, be a transition coach for kids who were seniors that year. So we would go and eat lunch with the kid once a month, and we would talk about, you know, did you do your community service hours? What are your grades like? Have you took your SAT? Did you take your ACT? Have you met all of the requirements for graduation? And so I did that with a kid last year, and I took her down to Claflin University, her and her best friend, and we did a college tour. And, you know, I volunteered to do that. It was just stuff that I like to do to give back. You know, pass that knowledge on. If you have it, give it. Like, don't keep it. Don't keep it to yourself. Give it back. Let's see. And then COVID hit. So we didn't really get to finish up with making sure that she got off to college. I mean, she did get to college. But, I mean, we couldn't finish it at the beginning of the year when things were supposed to go how we thought they were going to go. They didn't. But anyway, I also did Volunteers in Action, which was another volunteer thing that I did with the police department. And mostly what we did was Meals on Wheels. And we went and handed out meals to the elderly in the community. And we went and did the food pantries and handed out food that way. And we did the Harvest Hope Food Bank, and we helped separate the food. And what else did we do? Oh, we always went to the Ronald McDonald House and baked cookies. Another group that I'm in, a book club that I was in, we haven't been active in a couple years now, but we went and did a meal for families, breakfast. We did brunch for families at the Ronald McDonald House. So just finding ways and get together with a group of people and give back. What else? And this is all stuff that you can put on your resume, like depending on what kind of job you're looking for. And I'm not doing it just to put it on my resume. I do it because I enjoy it, but also because I can put it on my resume. And then lastly, you know, I give away tutoring. I give away the free pre-recorded tutoring access at least once a year. It's already very, very lowly priced, even without the pandemic, because I used to charge $250 for it, and it wasn't as much material, and the access time was a lot less. But yeah, so just finding ways to give back to your community, to your to the people that are coming up behind you and being social workers. And also, even my YouTube channel is giving back for free. I mean, I'm posting videos, taking my time, and I don't get paid for it. I just like doing it. So that's that. Hopefully this has been a helpful video for you to get you to thinking about what kind of volunteer experiences you want to do, what kind of internships you want to do. And if you have any feedback, then let me know. Hope you have a great evening. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat below. And I am very active. I look at the comments and stuff all the time. And thank you for the work that you do. Until next time, we'll see you later.